Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Across the Pond, a third consecutive Across the Pond. We're just really stringing together the results, just like Liverpool in real life. I'm your co-host, Evan. You can find me on Twitter at SoccerGod. I'm, of course, joined by Blue Chip LFC, but you can just call him Abby. We
The
are enjoying
main, the
our...
main, the main, the main guy. You're the co-host, okay? You're the
Okay,
secondary
okay,
person.
okay,
Please,
okay,
always
okay.
introduce me
Anyways,
first before you introduce yourself. Thank you. Thank you, Evan.
So you're welcome. You're welcome. So me and Avi are just enjoying the California sunshine. It's a fantastic Friday here
It
in
is.
the various parts of California that we are in. Hopefully, you, wherever you are across the world, across the pond, you are enjoying your Friday as well, even if the weather isn't so great. We have a whole lot to talk about today. We will be discussing the end of an era. Of course, it is a bit of a bittersweet end of an era. There is, of course, just the tactical preview of playing against Aston Villa tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning for us, that is. And then we, of course, will be previewing just different parts of the transfer window once again with Moby. We had such a great time with him the other week that it made sense to get him on here again. So
Great time with him. Great time with him last night on the phone, Evan.
absolutely. You know, these guys blowing up my phone while I'm at work trying to make bread and trying to support myself, and they just want to laugh and banter. And it's okay. It's okay. I make time for my friends. I'm a good friend, a good co-host, a good Liverpool fan in general. Shout out to everybody in the house. Aliye, Mohammed, I see you. Wandering Seeker, I see you. Stefan, what's up, guys? Ash, how you doing? It's great to have everybody here celebrating this Friday with us, and we're gonna just get straight into it. Avi, are you? Is bittersweet the correct emotion to describe what could be happening tomorrow, apart from just a game of football?
Yeah, it's especially when the players in question, the players that will be leaving. There's always some kind of sort of emotional attachment to all four of them. All four of them who we've watched, we've supported through tough times too.
Mhm.
And yeah, the announcement on Wednesday, it hit me a bit because it was like that's weird. The club's actually confirmed that all four will be leaving. Not that I expected anything different. But yeah, it's gonna be bittersweet. It's gonna be a sad end to what's been an indifferent season. We're playing well now, and hopefully we finish well, and wherever that may be, fifth or fourth or sixth even. We're finishing the season strong. Look forward to the summer, but yeah, it's gonna be quite an emotional one. I'm not one to shed tears, by the way, Evan, but I think tomorrow by full time, I think there'll be a shed or two. Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna be right there with you. And of course, we are speaking about, if you've been living under a rock, we are of course speaking about Roberto Firmino, James Milner, Naby Keita, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain as the sort of senior first team players who will be suiting up for the last time. Um, Obviously, mixed fortunes. It's a mixed bag in terms of how their careers panned out, how crucial you can say they were to the success, how much they progressed as individuals. I'm gonna get. I want to start with James Milner, Avi, because he deserved his own slide. I couldn't do a slide for every single player, ran out of time, but James Milner, it's a bittersweet
you had
farewell.
all week
And
to prepare, and you said that you could only prepare two slides. Come on, what's going on?
well, no, I was preparing myself mentally. The
You get
graphics.
paid enough. You get paid enough from me.
James
Which is
Milner,
impressive.
228 appearances, vice captain, the OG mentality monster, and in my opinion, a bona fide Liverpool legend. Now, James Milner, you might think of him, if you've been around for following the league for the better part of 2 decades, you might think of him as a bit of a journeyman. He has a pretty substantial list of Premier League clubs under his belt. He's Newcastle, Leeds, Man City, and then Liverpool. He's played for four of the biggest clubs in the country. But I think what's great for me personally, when I look back on his time at Liverpool, is that out of all of those big clubs and how important he was in each team, he spent the most amount of time and played the most amount of games at Liverpool by a pretty distinct margin. Played like 70 more games for us than he did for the next closest team, which I believe was Man City. I think he did about 144, 160 appearances for them roughly. Um, just, as Atik says here, just the ultimate professional. It's tough to to sort of put a tangible value on what James Milner brought, because he's obviously a player of a certain quality. Man City, Liverpool, he's wanted, he's desired, he's respected, and I think at times his individual quality as a player was a bit disrespected by us as a fan base. But when you have a team undergo in the midst of the Klopp revolution, which requires such mental strength and eventually earns the title of mentality monsters, how can we call BS on Jurgen Klopp when he says success is not possible without players like James Milner? So what he is bringing to the culture, to this strong culture that we created as we reached the summit of football, that cannot be understated or undervalued. And I have no regrets, Avi, over James Milner's time at Liverpool. My only regret is that he couldn't retire here. And, that's a testament to the condition he's kept himself in, the fact that at 37 going on 38 years old, he's still wanted and desired by other Premier League clubs, which can offer him more minutes.
Yeah, he he's up there, isn't he, when it comes to free transfers? For a period of time, he was the youngest scorer in the Premiership too. He first burst onto the scene, I think, in 2004 for Leeds, and then he went to like Villa, Newcastle, and everyone knew of his talent. Everyone knew that he wasn't just a versatile player; he was a very good player, Evan. He was predominantly a winger at first, and then came inside and wanted to be a midfielder. At times at Man City, he was used everywhere by sort of Mancini, by Pellegrini, and then he comes under. And Manchester City at the time don't think that they wanted to let him go, because they didn't. But he wanted a challenge, and he came to Liverpool Football Club, and I think he had previously said it during his younger days, that Liverpool was a football club that attracted him. But at the time when we had Benitez and whatnot, we couldn't probably afford a James Milner. So he goes to Man City. He cleans up there, Evan. Apart from obviously the big one, the European Cup. Comes to Liverpool under he came to a time where we didn't know what was going on, because Gerrard had left, Suarez had gone, Rodgers had ample amount of money to change stuff up. He brought a few players that didn't work out. Comes to play for Brendan Rodgers and Liverpool. Brendan obviously gets the sack, but if ever a Klopp player, if there ever was a Klopp player, it's James Milner. His tenacity, his aggression, his leadership skills, like you mentioned, that mentality. He brought that Premiership League experience, winning it with Manchester City, to Liverpool. And yes, it took time. It took 2-3 years, until Klopp got his team ready. But boy, has he been a monumental player for this football club, a mammoth reputation. He's led by example, never complained when he had to do a fairly a long stint at left back in the 2017-2018 season. He played at left back, or the 2016-2017 even, where he played left back most of the time. He's been put out wide. He wanted to play in the middle. He got his chance to play in the middle, and he's been, ever present. Yes, in the last sort of couple of years, in the last 18 months, he's been having a few niggling injuries. And like you said, it's a shame that he can't retire, but I think it's the right time. It is the right time to part ways with James Milner. I think he still has a lot to offer. I think Brighton is such a smart move for him, similar to what Adam Lallana is doing there with his experience and the players that are coming through there, whether they're being brought young and cheap from South America or the youth that's just coming through. I think James Milner will have that same sort of impact there. And he's still got, I would say, another 2 years in him, easy at that level, Evan. A great player. And he's won it all. He's won he's won 2 league titles by arguably the 2 best teams in recent years. In the last 5 years, the quality that Liverpool have produced and Manchester City have produced to get 90 plus, he's been part of both teams. That's how much he should be respected. That's how much his name should always be etched in Liverpool history and Manchester City history. Because he did a lot for them. He played a fair amount of games for them, and he's played what I think like you've mentioned there, 228 appearances for us, and he's still going strong at the age of 36. So this is going to be one of those where one of those tears will be shedding from one of my eyes, 100%. Top professional, and there can't be any bad word used against him. There's been times where I've tweeted and said, what is he doing starting in that first 11 at the age of 34, 35? And listen, I've swallowed my pride and put my hands up straight after the full time because he's been one of the best players. So James Milner, it definitely deserves his accolades, and I get a feeling that we'll soon call him Sir James Milner. Deserves to be knighted.
That's quite the send off. Very poetic there from Blue Chip. Am I correct in saying that only Gareth Barry has made more Premier League appearances, Abby?
Barry and Giggs.
That's right. So not just a Liverpool legend, but also someone a Premier League legend, somebody you associate with the Premier League. Like Gareth Barry, in all honesty, was never really a world-class player, obviously, but he's a Premier League legend because he's part of the furniture in the English Premier League. He's part of every weekend we've spent our lives just watching this league and watching these players just strive for various achievements and challenges. And hopefully, Abby, you say he's got another year, 2 years. I believe it wholeheartedly. I just hope we are first in line to recruit him for a junior coaching position, because it's been mentioned he wants to pursue his coaching badges and get the proper qualifications. Seems like a guy who's ready-made for it. And I hope that we are first in line to offer him a route into the world of coaching. And hopefully, the existing connections will still be around at Liverpool to allow that to happen. Abby, like you, it'll be hard to keep the eyes dry when James Milner waves goodbye to the Kop. Do you before we move on, do you have a favorite Milner moment? It can be a pass, it can be a goal, it can be anything he did whilst employed for Liverpool Football Club.
Wow, a favorite James Milner moment. Wow.
I'll go first if you want some extra time to think about it.
I'll let you go first. Gotcha. I'm older, so my memory's not as sharp as yours because you're still young enough to be my son. So let me get a memory.
You're remembering.
You know what? No, I'll go first because I think it's going to be the same game, the Barcelona game.
Oh yeah,
Barcelona game.
Yeah.
And he had a little bit of a niggle as well throughout the game. But
it looked like he was going to have to come off at one point, and then he played through the pain barrier. And for me, Avi, it's the ending. The James Milner, the best at taking the ball into the corner the world has ever seen. He becomes Kaká in the corner. James Milner, he's just incredible. And then his celebration of just everyone's celebration that day will take them into the halls of Liverpool folklore. Of course, Genie, collapsing to his knees, pointing to the sky. It's Milner collapsing to his knees and like pounding the turf in a way that almost said, I absolutely knew we could do it.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a collapse in disbelief. This is not a collapse because I'm tired. This is a collapse where I'm pounding the turf as if to say, that's right. This is Liverpool Football Club. This is what we are capable of in the Champions League against insurmountable odds.
Yeah, and another moment was when I think someone's mentioned it here, Anfield Road, when he got subbed off at West Ham away. He got subbed off. It was 2-1, and he was complaining to Klopp, like, why did I come off? And then I think the substitution got the assist for Salah to score, and then he's going back to Klopp and giving him a high five. So that certainly was a moment that I remember as well. But that Barcelona game, how can you not remember the shift that he put in, and not just that shift that he put in, him and Jordan Henderson, two players who recently have had a bit of negative things chucked at them, but those two were soldiers. Just want to read Anish the Ripper, who's staying up from India. He said, I'm a Liverpool fan from India, and from this far away, I can sense the presence and the weight Milner had on this team. We got him for a free, and he gave everything for this team. He 100% did, but he 100%
Well said.
did.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. Probably the greatest free signing in Liverpool history, and one of the better free signings in the history of European football. I think you would have to put it up there with one of the better Bosman signings you can think of, just off the
And
top of your head.
we've done well when it comes to free transfers. I remember obviously Gary McAllister came in for a couple of seasons. Marcus Babbel, who was sensational for one season, then he got the illness, unfortunately. But I think James Milner would have to be number one in terms of the players in recent times that we've got on a free transfer. Phenomenal professional.
Absolutely. Of course, James Milner, as people are saying, like Mo here, crazy Milner stat. He's the most assists in a Champions League campaign in the history of the competition. It's pretty wild. I think in that 17-18 campaign, which I think this stat is from, Firmino just had an absolute monster European campaign as well. 16, 17 goals or something like that. But we've recruited well when it comes to the free transfers. Obviously, some of the younger guys are not technically free because it goes to tribunal, but Joel Matip has ended up being a good player. Milner has also, like Ash says here, he's taken some high pressure penalties for this Liverpool team, and high pressure penalties when we needed the points to get into the Champions League. He took a bunch of high pressure penalties in 16-17. He'd be playing left back, be doing mostly nothing all game, and then we'd get a penalty and he'd have to score it, and I think he only missed one for us, one or two out of maybe close to 20. It's a pretty great rate. And then, that absolutely built the momentum and the mentality that was needed to run away with the league. So he's a man for the big occasion, and he's a man for every passing minute behind the scenes, upholding the culture, upholding the standards. So James Milner, best of luck to you at Brighton, my friend. De Zerbi's getting an absolute gem. I applaud you. I will find it hard not to get my tears wet. But, Avi, we have, of course, saying goodbye to another figure. I won't compare him to James Milner because they're different people and different players, but my favorite Liverpool player of all time.
Wow.
In my lifetime, I'm 27 years old. My favorite Liverpool player of all time is suiting up for the last time tomorrow at Anfield. And I'm, of course, talking about Roberto Firmino. 254 appearances, the catalyst of the Klopp revolution, the face of the modern false nine, and an irrefutable Liverpool legend. We would be here for hours, Avi, if we went through all of our favorite Firmino moments, because he, unlike Milner, had the luxury of scoring probably a lot more goals. As Mohammed says, the system. I'm sure we all remember where we were, what we were doing, and what we said when Klopp sent out that lineup away at the Etihad in 2015, and we were like, we are playing without a striker. Where are the goals going to come from? And then we thrashed them. Firmino was just unplayable in the false nine, and it's an education that we all just sort of got overnight, right? Because we as Liverpool fans, we'd never really played this way before. We were coming out of an era where we had, Suarez, sort of a bit of a do-it-all attacker, but not necessarily a false nine. We had Torres before that, definitely an out-and-out nine. We were children of Fowler and Heskey and Owen. So we were not used to this sort of player, and modern football in general was also not super accustomed to this type of player. But Klopp saw something in Firmino and saw a route into creating a hyper-aggressive, high-pressing team with him as the focal point. And I've spent the last few years, as long as I've just been going on the internet and talking about Liverpool, going on about 2 years now, I've called him a unicorn at every opportunity I can, because that's what he is. He is one of a kind, and in a way he's irreplaceable. Gakpo has done well sort of mimicking some patterns of play that Firmino, sort of trademarked in this Liverpool team. And I do think Gakpo can sort of do a job as a false nine. But to do it like Firmino, to the level he was doing it at for so long, I think will be a nearly impossible task. So I urge us to view Gakpo in a different light, view Gakpo as something new as opposed to Bobby's student, because that's not really what he'll be. He'll be his own version of himself, Cody Gakpo. And Roberto Firmino is 100% himself. Unselfish, as right on cue. Atik, the ultimate selfless player. I mean, how many of Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah's goals do they owe to the work, graft, and selflessness of Roberto Firmino? Just incredible, incredible. I don't know. This one will really get the tears going
I think
tomorrow.
you're trying to. I think you're shedding a tear now, Evan.
Yeah, I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to.
Yeah, I'm lost for words. You said everything perfectly, immaculately for the first time in your content career. Honestly, he wasn't your typical Brazilian. Yes, he had the flicks and stuff, but he had a work ethic, and I truly believe that came from his time 2 years at Hoffenheim. He came as a manufactured, structured player into Liverpool, and Brendan Rodgers. People want to say he's a good manager and whatnot. He didn't know what to do with him because he didn't know what to do with such intelligence. He played him out on the left wing against West Ham, I remember, at Anfield, and he looked out of sorts. And then Klopp comes in very quickly, and thank God, because that Man City game away at the Etihad, where we beat them 4-1, and Bobby gets his first goal. He was instrumental. Him, Coutinho, Emre Can.
Just tapped it in, didn't he? We just walked it into the net.
Yeah, that's when we start realizing, okay, there's a player there now. He's now, it must have been about 2 weeks into Klopp's tenure, and you could see already that the work that he had done with Firmino in that time. What a player! Yes, he's been a great servant, and he could have played for anyone around the world, Evan. That's how great he was. But I just think that Liverpool was made for him, and he was made for Liverpool. People talk about, he didn't score enough. He didn't need to score enough. He had the likes of Mane and Salah getting the goals. He was, as people say, the system, the orchestra to knit things together. He was absolutely brilliant. His goals, I remember his greatest, that hat trick against Arsenal. And he scored a few against Arsenal. I remember a 2-2 at Anfield where he scored 2 brilliant goals. One was outside the box, one was with his left, I think, in the first half. There's too many memories with Bobby. And again, a player that's won it all, Evan. He's won it all, and he's been instrumental in the run-up to the 2018-2019 season. He was instrumental in the league title winning season. He's instrumental from that team that lost in the Europa League final against Seville. He played in that final, alongside like the Sturridge, who was there at the time as well. He's brilliant. They've come from adversity, and they've won everything that was possible. Yes, he's taken a little bit of a bit part role in recent times, but he's so influential. He's one player I thought at 31 he can go on like I'm not sure if you remember, Evan, but some in the comments make a Teddy Sheringham. Just the intelligence, doesn't rely on pace, doesn't rely on awesome technique, just a brain intelligence. And Teddy was a number 10 predominantly, who played until 38, 39, 40 at the highest level for West Ham as well towards the end of his career. I think Bobby's the same. I'm actually gutted that we couldn't give Bobby another 2-year extension. But if the player wants to play in a better climate, I'm not saying that it's set in stone that he's going to Spain, but he deserves that. At 31, he can still offer the likes of a Atletico Madrid, even a Barcelona, another 2 great years, especially in a league of like the La Liga, where he gets time, he gets space, similar to Italy as well. He still got it, and yeah, he's gonna be it's gonna be upsetting when he does leave.
Absolutely, it's gonna be really, really difficult. And I want to piggyback on what you said earlier. Like, even for all of his awesome technique and technical abilities, I think his best attributes were still up here. His best attributes were still what he did off the ball to such a high level. And then you combine that with the vision and the creativity. He was able to do things on the pitch that nobody else really could. He's able to unlock deep blocks in a way that other people could not. Absurd assists, one against Southampton at St. Mary's in 17-18.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's one where it's sort of like a roulette flick to slot home to Newcastle a few seasons ago. Absolutely unplayable at his best. But I do think it is now time to welcome to the stream our guest, Moby. Moby, are you there? Can you hear us?
I think.
Hi guys, good afternoon. How are you?
Good
Doing
afternoon,
great,
Moby.
Moby. It's
All
a
good, all
pleasure
good.
to have you again, and you've joined at just the right time because we
Thanks,
are
man.
waxing lyrical about Roberto Firmino and what he means to us as fans, as people, as just other guys who are in love with him. What does Roberto Firmino mean to you, and what is his lasting impression on you as a Liverpool fan?
Yeah, Roberto, Bobby Firmino. What can I add that you haven't already talked about? I think everything you guys have said. I caught the tail end of this, and everything you guys said was pretty much spot on. I think for me, what I'll never forget about Bobby Firmino was that when I was in Anfield watching the Everton game, the game where Origi won the match at the 90 plus sixth minute. I
Yeah.
remember heading to the. I got invited into the players' lounge after the game, and it's just such a privilege to get there because it's just the players after the match. They're all cleaned up and their families are there. They have some meals and there are a few drinks, and it was just a really cool experience to be there with all the players. And I remember Bobby, his daughter was walking into the hallway, and he was running after her. And as he was passing me by, he actually stopped by to say hi and smile and said, "Do you want to take a photo?" And I said, "Well, no, you have your daughter. Just go after her." It's such a genuinely nice guy, he's just the same. He was smiling. He had that smile on his face the way he always does. Just a great guy, and you can just feel it, just being next to him. So for me, that'll be always something that I carry forward. Was just a, you know, from a human level, but obviously everything else you guys have already covered. He's a legend. There's nothing else to say. He's just a legend. He'll always be one. And I'm gonna be really sad tomorrow. That's for sure. Just like everybody else, it's gonna be a sad day. Yeah.
Greatest Bobby moment, Moby?
There just isn't one. There's just so many, right? It's too many, man. I mean, we just switching itself is amazing, right? Imagine you ask somebody what's the greatest moment, and you're like, I can't tell you, because there's just so many, right? So that is the greatest probably moment, right there.
Yeah, how could you choose one? If I had to choose, and I've done this for years, I would choose the moment that we have pictured in the background here on the left, where he takes his shirt off and celebrates to the Liverpool fans away at Stoke
That was the
in
volley, right?
16-17 after the volley. For those who don't vividly remember, our top four charge was losing all momentum. We were top of the league in December, or 1 point off the top of the league on Christmas. And then it all sort of just fell apart in January and February. And we were looking like we were going to fall out of the top four. And we went away to Stoke, I believe in March or April. And we were banged up. Coutinho and Firmino had been run ragged. They had played an ungodly amount of minutes in recent weeks and months. We were just super injured. We started a not completely fit Divock Origi and Ben Woodburn that day, and we were down a goal after Jonathan Walters, of course, as he always did back then, scored against us. And so Klopp, knowing that a loss here would not doom us in our top four race, but certainly put a dent in it, he throws Coutinho and Firmino on. And Coutinho gets the goal back, so we're drawing, but we need a win. Draw is not good enough. And then Firmino scores that goal. And not only does he have absolutely no right to score that goal, and not only does that goal mean so much in the context of that game, of that week, of that month, of that season, the ripple effect of that goal in the coming years cannot be understated, because without that goal, there's probably no top four finish. There's definitely no trip to Kiev. And who knows if there's even a trip to Madrid in the following season without that goal. So when I look back at the little moments that covered so much of the Klopp era, that the ripple effect, the butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it. When I look back on those moments in the Klopp era, this moment rings the loudest for me, and it's an iconic celebration from an absolutely iconic player. And it might become a tattoo one day. That's how serious I am about it. So it's tough. Avi, do you have a favorite goal or moment from Roberto Firmino?
Yeah, I think there's so many to choose from, but the one for me, purely because we had never won it, we'd come close to winning the World Club Championship during the 80s, but it was the win against Flamengo, because it was a trophy that that was missing from our collection, and it might not mean much to many, but for me it means a lot. You ask the Spanish clubs like the Real Madrids, the Barcelonas, or Italian clubs what it means to win the World Club Championship. For me, when he scored, and he got the winner, that was everything for me. So that's my sort of favorite moment. But there's so many. Manchester City away in the Champions League, the cute finish against them, the Arsenal hat trick. There's so many. There's so many goals that we can talk about, and like you said, we'll be here all night, Evan, talking about. We probably remember each and every one of his goals too. So for me, it was against Flamengo. His greatest moment is just made us world champions, for the first time. So yeah, that was my moment.
Yeah, I mean, no shortage of moments to choose from. I just want to say I was directly behind the goal for two of the goals of that Firmino hat trick at home to Arsenal in December 2018. I was at my second ever Liverpool game, and obviously we go a goal down, and then Firmino just punishes them for the remainder of the half, and especially that goal where he
slalom.
sits three or four. Yeah, the slalom. He sits 3 or 4 players down. I cannot explain to you how I transcended. I hovered in my seat. I was lifted 10 feet off the ground. It was just an incredible feeling and an incredible moment that I will never ever forget. So round of applause for Roberto Firmino, one of the greatest to ever play for Liverpool, one of the greatest to ever wear the shirt, my favorite player to watch in the shirt. And we'll save the tears for tomorrow, because I'm sure we're all getting very, very emotional. But let's preview some of the more business-like discussions going around Liverpool at the moment. Obviously, Liverpool, as we discussed last time Moby was on, Liverpool have quite a rebuild to do this summer. Liverpool have just a lot of holes to fix, because as we've discussed, we have Firmino leaving, we have Milner leaving, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita. Not only is that 4 technically senior first team players, regardless of how often they play, that's a lot of money off the wage bill as well. So there's lots of room for new players to come in. So let's get straight into it, shall we? These are the players we wanted to talk about today. We, of course, Alexis Mac Allister has been a name on the lips of every Liverpool fan for the last.
Just before I interrupt you, I think there's been an update in regards to Mac Allister. I think our dear friend on the show who's come on before, Fabrizio Romano, has said it will be 60 million the fee that they expect, and the player still mulling over the right project. But
that's I saw that just a second. People in the comments were talking about that. I was going to bring up what David Ornstein said this morning. David Ornstein, not really the sort of guy to stick his neck out too often on things, but he said increasingly likely that Liverpool end up signing Alexis Mac Allister. And of course, David Ornstein, one of the bigger names in football journalism, like I said, doesn't really stick his neck out too often or speak in such I don't know, assuredness in his tone. These guys are generally very careful, with how they phrase things and things like that. But Alexis Mac Allister didn't have, in my opinion, the greatest cameo against Newcastle yesterday, but not much he could really do off the bench against such odds. But Alexis Mac Allister, Avi, is he the type of guy you picture as being the marquee midfield signing for Liverpool this summer, or is there somebody going to be coming in your opinion, with greater, I don't know, clout, pedigree, stature, financials?
He's definitely a brilliant signing. And Moby will tell you that. Moby's the one who's got the who's been tracking him for years, even when he was in Argentina. He's definitely a player that has impressed me this season. I was, last season there were talks like, he's a good player, this and that. Didn't see enough of him, but this season, especially after that World Cup that he's had, he scored, I think, 11 goals this season from midfield. A very good player. I liked him in the FA Cup. It was FA Cup game against United. And obviously the League Cup game against United. And you see some highlight reels now that people are snipping up. Some big Liverpool accounts who like doing those compilation videos. Certainly a top player. But for me, like I said before, we want a statement signing. I think he just falls short of a statement signing. And you know who I want. Whether we get him or not is another question. But he fits the bill. He can play in a variety of roles, the 6, the 8, the 10. He is you would imagine, a perfect Klopp player. And you would think, with Gundogan going from Man City, he'd fit them like a glove as well. So he's a player that's highly courted for me. But I'll let Moby take it away with Mac Allister if there's any sort of like update or, what, as far as he knows and where he fits really.
Yeah, from my side, well, look, I think these brand name players sometimes can be overrated in the sense that, sometimes they don't live up to what they're supposed to do or whatnot. I'd rather sign a player that really fits what we need, because these are the type of players that win you things, like the genies of the world, that you won't see him do all the stuff in the half spaces, but really those are the reasons why we ended up winning it, or winning the trophies that we have. So for me, it's superb signing, a guy who does a lot of hard work and things, but I think there is a gentleman agreement.
Oops.
Him to leave because he signed an agreement just before the World Cup, so to speak, and that was just basically to let them know to keep the value up. But I think this is his last real contract of his career. That's going to be a big one. So I think his father is just really weighing the options that he has to make sure he maximizes all of it. And I think the Peps of the world are throwing money at him, and I think that's causing a little bit of a delay. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we should get this over the line, just because we started so early on this project. So keep your fingers crossed. I think a week or two, and then we find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems like the groundwork has been laid, as you've said, Moby. We've been doing our homework on this guy, doing our research. The file's been in the works for a while, and it seems like it's one of the links, at least publicly, that hasn't lost steam. Other links have been, publicly pushed this way or that way. This is the one where more and more people seem to be signing on to the fact that, or not the fact, but the likelihood that he could be a Liverpool player. And I do agree with you, Moby. Nobody is a household name until they are. There's maybe some, obviously how many of us were, as excited as we should have been about Roberto Firmino when he signed in the summer of 2015, and then he goes on to become one of the greatest players to ever play for Liverpool. So it's one of those things, I don't think I'm not one of those guys that thinks a name has to represent a certain marketable value to come to Liverpool. I don't need players that have the most Instagram followers or have the most Twitter clout or whatever. I want the players that are going to be the most effective for Liverpool. And Firmino is obviously the epitome of that during his time here. And I hope Alexis Mac Allister can be the same. The next name that I think we want to talk about is Jurrien Timber. The route to the Eredivisie is becoming a bit of a well-trodden path, wouldn't you say? In recent years, Avi, it's obviously we had a great success with Luis Suarez. And then we're now having another great success with Cody Gakpo as well, who in my opinion has been our signing of the season. Jurrien Timber, a guy who I think was pursued really heavily by United last summer. I saw that name
Still
buzzing
are.
around in
Yeah,
their
yeah.
I saw that name buzzing around their transfer rumor mills last summer. He's not a traditional center back, is he? I think you and Moby know a bit more about him than I do. I don't watch as much Eredivisie as you guys. So Jurrien Timber, what are your general thoughts on his profile, his likely price? Just what's your general vibe from the guy?
So it's a weird one because the times that I have seen clips of him here and there, and Moby will tell you more. I've never been overly impressed by Jurrien Timber. He's definitely a versatile player. He can play right back very efficiently, and then play centrally as well as a centre back. I think Moby mentioned to us yesterday he's obviously played Virgil for the Dutch team in a back three, I think under Koeman maybe. And it looks as if we are going sort of, into the Dutch league and seeing what we can find. We'll talk about Orkan Kokcu as well, who's playing at Feyenoord. But Timbers, that this one's for Moby. I want Moby to take this one away because I know Moby has talked this up quite a bit the last few months as well. A player that would fit, I think, into Klopp's philosophy and again the work ethic, and he kind of fits that sort of hybrid of when he needs to play right back he can, and he could play centre back. There are question marks about his height, but Lisandro Martinez has come into the league and he's proved a lot of critics wrong. Me especially, when I thought his height would be an issue. He's come into the league and played very well. I don't think Timber would have such issues either. But I'll let Moby give us give us a little bit more in-depth information about Timber.
Yeah, I wrote an article recently and I posted it. So if you guys have a chance, go have a read on it. It's a quick read, but it's a bit more in depth into who he is. Jurrien Timber is, for me, a very quintessential Pep Linders type of signing. I think he has been pushed very heavily by Virgil, and Virgil plays with him for the national team. The World Cup, he featured in the back three with him on the right side. His speed allows him to adapt pretty quickly to push forward. So the positives about him: he's a right-sided center back. He's a right back as well. He can play that, but his passing range allows him to play quite well in midfield as well. So he can push up. In fact, Ten Hag wanted to use him as a midfield, but then he ended up leaving because of his passing range. So for a center back or right back, his ball carrying attributes are really good. He can actually push the ball up a lot. So there's a lot to like about him. There's a lot of growth he can still have. But look, if Virgil speaks about you and says that you are way ahead in your development at the same age as Virgil was, he's 21. That speaks a lot. And if he doesn't end up signing for us, the adaptation period is going to be so quick, given he's going to be playing with Virgil in a back three. If Konate needs a break or whatnot, and you have Pep Linders who can bet him in. On the flip side, the height issue is there. Jurgen loves his center backs really tall. But if you look at the stats of Thiago and the number of aerial duels he wins, he's 5'7". He wins. Just if you look up the numbers yourself, you'll see for what I'm talking about. He wins better aerial duel percentages than people who are way taller than him. So just being tall is not a requirement to winning aerials or things like that. It's not, there is a correlation, but it doesn't always lead to the same sort of results. So if you're smart, you can use your body well, you can do it. And N'Golo Kante won Premier League Player of the Year, being a 5'6" defensive midfielder in the Premier League. So I'm not too worried about that. As long as you're smart, you should be fine. But yeah, look.
And just coming on that quickly, maybe sorry to interrupt you. He is 5'10", so he's an inch taller than Lisandro Martinez, who's, like I said, he's come into the Premiership and he's played very well. Yes, he had a bit of a shaky start, But who says that Jurriën Timber? I think we're always under that illusion that centre backs must be tall. They must be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
I think we're getting away from that notion. And
Yeah,
look,
and it's not a necessarily new phenomenon. I mean, how tall was Fabio Cannavaro? I don't think
Baresi,
Cannavaro
but
was.
I don't think Baresi was
Yeah,
that tall either.
Baresi,
What
Cannavaro, and
Mascherano?
those.
Mascherano.
Yeah,
in our middle, 5'7".
yeah, absolutely. And if you're a good defender, it's more about how you're reacting to situations. Maldini says, when I have to start throwing my weight around and my physicality around and sliding into things, and I've already made a mistake. So guys like Conte, of course, sort of diminutive players are also very strong in the tackle. So, your overall stature is not necessarily a
No.
guaranteed metric for I'm going to win X amount of aerial duels or X amount of tackles. It's far less straightforward than that. And I just want to say I did read Moby's write up on Jurriën Timber, sort of familiarize myself a little bit more. And for any of you who are interested, that is mobyhack.substack.com. That is Moby HAQUE.substack.com. He had a similarly great write up on Cody Gakpo when he was making the move to Liverpool. And it's great to hear that the move for Gakpo is being endorsed or by Van Dijk and Gakpo himself. But if guys like Moby like him as well, then I am on board, definitely, because these are the sorts of signings that I think would complement our new shape. It's a more flexible shape. Guys moving in and out of positions. My gut tells me that perhaps Timber doesn't play predominantly at center back for Liverpool if he signs. Especially if the long-term project from Ten Hag himself was to move him into midfield, then that's absolutely something I could get behind, because from like Avi said, from what little I've seen of him, I was blown away at how good he was at carrying and protecting the ball, which is obviously a great key component for a Liverpool defender as well. We need defensive players who are good on the ball. Guys, any final thoughts on Timber, Avi?
Just last one, and not to say that I'm comparing him to the great Baresi, but Baresi was 5'9". And we know what one of the greatest defenders of all time, Baresi was. So no, I don't think height's an issue. Timber,
How tall was Roberto Carlos? I don't think he was that tall either.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these defenders. I mean, again, this height thing is not unique to defenders and everything. People still always say, "Oh, I need a striker that's 6'3" and 6'2," and I'm like, Lionel Messi is 5'5", 5'6". Aguero and the Tevez of the world was tearing Premier League apart, being how tall they are. So I always say intelligence is always better than physical abilities.
Yeah, and Cannavaro 5'9" as well, Ballon d'Or winning Fabio Cannavaro of Madrid and Juventus. Cannavaro, World Cup champion Fabio Cannavaro. It's the guys who are this is the term Rob Gutman came up with on the Enfield Wrap, heightist. There's a bunch of heightist people out there who are discriminating potential center back signings based upon height. Maybe it's a bit of an old school thinking, but as we could see, it's an old school concept, having defenders who are traditionally maybe not as tall as you would like them to be, not a clear indicator of their stats or success. Sticking in the Eredivisie, and perhaps a subject that's not getting enough attention, Feyenoord have won the Eredivisie, which is great. I love that the Dirk Kuyt connection to Feyenoord I've always liked. I love it because I get to make fun of my coworker who's an Ajax fan. I get to say, ha ha ha, Ajax didn't win the Eredivisie. It's great. But one of the main catalysts of their success in the last 2 years has been Orkun Kokcu of Turkey. Now, guys, really quick, before we actually talk about the player, does he look like Van Nistelrooy a little bit to you guys, like in the face? Doesn't he kind of look like Van Nistelrooy? Am I tripping?
Slightly.
I don't know. He looks like the child of Van Nistelrooy and Perez. Like I feel like it's like a familiarity thing. Like I feel like I've seen him before or met him before.
Maybe a hybrid.
Maybe a hybrid. Now here's the thing. I don't know much about this player other than numbers on a screen. I've watched him maybe twice. So I'm going to let Moby take it away with Orkun Kokchu, an exciting player coming out of Feyenoord.
Yeah, so Kokchu is quite familiar to Premier League teams. 2 years ago, Arsenal really wanted to sign him, and so did a bunch of other clubs like Leeds. Um, he's the captain of Feyenoord. He plays in a 4-2-3-1. He plays in the defensive midfield um, in tandem with another player that's, in my eye, was the breakout player for them for Eredivisie for the second half of the campaign, Mats Wiefer, who has been absolutely phenomenal. So much so that he actually got called up to the Dutch national team. Feyenoord only signed him for 500,000 euros. It was that cheap. So, playing next to Kokchu probably also elevated him. So as a captain as well for Feyenoord, it's been a fantastic year for him. So I think a player like that has a lot of appeal. There is a lot of interest, from what I understand, from the Pep Linders angle. Just because if some of the players that we want fall through, he's actually someone that'll be a bit more affordable, and these Dutch clubs will work with payment options and all those things. So I think he'll be Premier League bound one way or the other. And hopefully we get our first targets. If not, I'll be very happy with him. A player that's really good defensively, but even in a 4-2-3-1, very offensive-minded player. Can shoot from distance, has a really nice foot, and actually has very nice feet because he's a left and right-sided player. He can play with both feet. He can shoot with both feet. So really unique player. And again, we miss goals from midfield. So if he can play in defense, defensive position, but also push up, well, hey, who doesn't want a player like that? So a smart signing. Keep an eye on this one. Watch this one.
Maybe you said something there. Kokchu would obviously be maybe a second or even a third choice signing if our first target for a 6 falls through. Is that what we're trying to establish here?
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the good things that looks like what we're cooking this year. I don't want to use the word cooking, but in this sense, I'm just saying cooking in the sense that we're using a lot more ingredients than pepper and salt. I think last year was just salt and pepper. We just had Chouameni, and then we ended up with Thuram and nothing in between. So this year, it just looks like we have a lot more ingredients, a lot more spices, and I think the idea is that if some fall apart, we need to sign players. So having your tentacles in multiple different cookie jars is a really smart way to go, because all these players that we're looking at, other clubs are looking at as well. So you have to be ready. So really good signs, if you ask me.
He's on silent. You're on mute, so I'll go on. I'll take this over.
No. I'm gonna speak. You be quiet. One of my first impressions of Kokchu during my limited watch time that Moby already touched upon was the guy is very ambidextrous, very comfortable with both feet, and I think for a team like us who we're trying to play out from the back more often than not, we're trying to find neat little ways to shift our bodies and receive the ball in certain situations to open up the lines and play these passes. I think an ambidextrous player is extremely valuable. We saw a guy like Adam Lallana, who we wouldn't associate with sort of swashbuckling midfield play. He was able to do that role in a clot midfield because I think partially not just because he was so technically skilled, but because he was ambidextrous. And that's a quality that I really enjoy in a midfielder. No hate to Jordan Henderson, but I think one of the drawbacks of Jordan Henderson, just as his profile, is that he's very one-footed. I don't think Jordan Henderson is particularly adept with his left foot. And so I would be very appreciative of a guy like Kokchu coming in and sort of dictating things. A question I have for Moby on Kokchu is, so he's a guy who predominantly dictates from deeper positions, and then he eventually gets forward to contribute. Is he, when it comes to progressing the ball, is he more comfortable doing that with passing, or is he more comfortable doing that with just like raw ball carrying, would you say?
I think ball carrying, he's a bit of like a he's pretty similar to Timber style. You know, he can push up the ball and move with it.
Mhm.
But he's at the end of the day a really good playmaker. I mean, you know, he's his vision, and again, players in the back have a better view of the field as well. So his vision of players being the right place at the right time, I think that's a key element to his game. But again, you know, if a player like that comes in, it's going to be really interesting to see how we use him. But you know, 8-6 hybrid, I would say he can play anywhere there, and that's sort of what I think Jurgen is after. He's after players, you know, like Thuram, who's, you know, I would say more of an 8, but can he put in a shift at 6? Sure. You know, the amount of balls he can keep and, you know, hold on to, these abilities exist in these kind of targets. So um, yeah, I think the versatility is the number one thing that these players will provide if they do come in.
And if Kokchu was to explore his options in the market this summer, what would be a realistic price point for a player of his age and his quality?
Well, last year when Arsenal was chasing him, sorry, in 2021, he was about 20 million then,
Mm,
euros. So, you know, this year, out there, you know, even if you add double that, that's 40 million. I'm just saying double just because of the way market has been, and he's obviously just won the title as a captain for that. So that you have to factor these things in. Has a really great campaign as well. So 40 million euros. You know, if you do a 5-year contract, you're looking at what, less than 8 million a year. It's
mhm.
really decent.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely seems like a fair price for me. And prices are only going one way in the current
Yeah,
market. So you gotta
decent wage too.
find. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a bit different than trying to recruit somebody like Mason Mount, for example, who is already on kind of a big wage. Already playing in a
Yeah,
very hyper rich league. So that's what makes a guy like Kokchu very appealing to me, and a bit of an under the radar signing. Because if you were to go on Twitter and ask Premier League fans, especially what they thought of Orkun Kokchu. How many could give you an answer? I could give you maybe 30 seconds. That's about as much as I know. But surface level, I really like the profile. One of the names that you mentioned just a minute ago, Moby, when just talking about skills and profiles and characteristics, is Khephren Thuram um, of OGC Nice. Thuram is a player I had little to no knowledge of until you actually mentioned him to me last summer, Moby. You say, this guy,
yeah.
this guy looks. You're like, this guy looks pretty good, and I was like, yeah, you're right. He does look pretty good. I did some statistical deep diving on him, and yeah, in terms of like ball carriers in Europe's top 5 leagues, Khephren Thuram absolutely has to be up there, sort of as like a dynamic midfield force. Is it fair to say?
Yeah, look, you know, Thuram is somebody the club has been scouting since he was 16.
Wow.
I remember speaking to a friend of mine who said that, you know, they used to send scouts to watch him at a very young age. But obviously, we didn't really move for him or anything. But I think he's a real option for us. I think the club really likes him, and I think if you look at the patterns of all the players that we're going after, we're really going after good characters, which really is a Jurgen Klopp trait. If you look at Alexis, it's his father that we've been trying to woo, you know, and he had been invited to visit Anfield back in February. I mean, if you look at Gravenberch, it's been known we have sent people over to Netherlands to meet him, you know, and Lilian Thuram has been similar. It's been all his dads. You know, we've been reaching out because one of the biggest traits that we look for as good characters, and and watch the space because Rafaela Pimienta represents Gravenberch, but she also has really good links with Thuram because you
Wow.
know Mino and Lilian were pretty close back in the day, and so even though she might not represent, I think him being the person that runs his career for both of his sons, I think the agents like Pimienta will become useful in closing any deals. So I think there's a lot of pieces there, and I think Nice will cash in on the 60 million or so euros that they're mentioning him as the price tag.
And in terms of price tags, is that Do you think that's fair in the current market for a player of that quality and that age?
I mean, he's so young, and his. I think for me, the Thuram appeal is really simple. It's just the unique profile that he has for being this lanky guy, but such good footwork, such good ball carrying ability, and holding on like a genie, but a player that's just like it's giant, right? But
Hmm.
so really unique profile. So I think that in itself is something that you don't see very often. So. Um, Jurgen Klopp type tall player that I guess there's a lot of little things that I think Jurgen really would like
Hmm.
in him. So 60 million. If you ask me, no player is worth 50 million. Never mind 60. But this is the market. Is the market,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it is what it is. And obviously, Nice is owned by Jim Ratcliffe. I don't think he's going to do us any favor by giving us
Yeah.
discounts. So it is what it is.
Absolutely not. A different price for Liverpool than it would be if Eric Ten Hag came
Absolutely.
knocking. Absolutely. And there, I would just want to say, like Moby's saying, there's a bunch of little things that make his profile that add up to make his profile more interesting. There's also just the coolness factor of having a French player named Thuram in your team, because obviously that's footballing royalty right there. The genes are good. He's got good footballing blood. He's got good footballing DNA. I feel like he's been a bit misprofiled on Twitter. I think I mentioned this to you maybe a few months ago. I feel like people are misprofiling him because they see a big presence in the central midfield department like that, and people think destroyer. People think ball winner, which he is. He's good at winning the ball, but his best traits are what he does with the ball. It's the retention, it's the carrying of the ball, the protecting of the ball, the distributing of the ball. It's finding the right pockets to burst into. So I personally wonder if he would be a 6 for us, maybe an 8. He's such an interesting profile to me, and I think a guy who has characteristics like Gini Wijnaldum but is built more like Paul Pogba. That is really interesting to me. It really piques
Mhm.
my curiosity, and I do. Again, I don't watch as much Ligue 1 as I do the Premier League or La Liga or anything like that. But I definitely see more Ligue 1 than I do of the Eredivisie, and I really do like this profile as well as some of other the Nice players who have come into prominence in recent years as well.
Yeah, I, I would just want to add to that is a lot of times people don't watch games. They don't, and they watch a
Mm,
5 second clip and they're like, "Well, this guy's slow. This guy's fast." I had somebody tell me Ugarte is so slow, and I'm like, "You haven't watched Miguel Ugarte. He's extremely fast. What are you talking about?" Like, I can show you games that you should go rewatch, and it's just like they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Watch games, guys. Like, don't just watch a clip or just regurgitate what somebody said. Oh, that player is slow. Well, see it for yourself. Like, don't. Yeah. So just wanted to add that note to your point.
no, absolutely. I think we're in a tough space in footballing discourse when asking people to watch games is a bit too much. We're testing the attention spans of people who are contributing their footballing opinions to the internet. Avi, on Thuram, is this someone who you see fitting into Liverpool? Is this someone who you think fits the 8 profile or the 6 profile? Are you enthusiastic about how unique he is as a profile? And does for about 60-ish million, is that something that entices you?
I think you got to be enthusiastic when a name like Thuram props up. His dad was a legend, for
Hmm.
Parma, for France, World Cup winning, right back, amazing. And the two brothers aren't bad. Marcus Thuram has had a good season at Mönchengladbach, and then you got Khephren, who's at Nice. But they're a tough club to negotiate with. We know who owns them, Jim Radcliffe, who may be a stakeholder in Manchester United soon, or he may be a full stakeholder of that football club. It'll be interesting to see if they merge, or there's a merger of some sort between Nice and Manchester United in terms of players going the other way and back and forth. But Kevin Tram, yeah, he's definitely tall. He's good. He's very nimble, considering his height. And for 60 million, I think it is a bit steep, but these are the going rates that you've got to pay, unfortunately, in football now. And, I think there are players out there that I think there's an abundance of midfielders there this summer that we could pick and choose from that can come in and definitely improve immediately of what we already have. But Khephren Thuram, I think at 21, another couple of years, I think he could be a world beater. But why don't we just get ahead of ourselves and get him in now? Very good footballer, very progressive. He can go past players. He reminds me of a young Yaya Toure. The height, the build, the stature, and I think
No pressure.
if he could be half the player that Yaya Toure was, then we've definitely got a winner.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting profile, and like you alluded to, Avi, it's obviously we're all disappointed we haven't bolstered our midfield as much as we should have in previous windows, but I guess the silver lining is that we're now having to do this massive rebuild during a summer where there's a lot of young on U24 midfield talent on the move, and they're available and they're being shopped around. So it's a bit of a rich vein of midfielders, and just based on that logic alone, I don't see us really waiting around for anybody. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but it definitely seems if one thing falls through or doesn't quite work out, Mason Mount's asking for too much money or he signs a new contract, big deal. It's not the knee to the groin it would be in previous windows. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Moby?
What about you, Moby? Is that sort of a fair attitude to have going into the window? Like, we're not necessarily going to, get all worked up if one of these things fall through because there's just so many high potential midfielders available.
Absolutely. I think, last year the crop was just Tchouaméni. If you think, I remember having this conversation last year with a friend, and he was saying, well, listen, if Tchouaméni doesn't work out, who are you going to go for? And nobody was at that level, right? At any level where I can just say, well, let's go get this person or that person. There wasn't that many options. But this year, I just feel like, there is that many options. Most of them were also because of availability. A lot of these players were not available last year. Like a player like Barella is more available this year. A player like Tchouaméni maybe becomes available this year just because of the, Ancelotti, he's not getting chances to play. There is players like Thuram, there's players like Ugarte, who's, obviously really good player. There's players like Alexis, who was not available again last year. So many options, and so many options that we have, and I just feel like, yeah, if things work out, great. If not, let's move on. There's no time to shed tears or feel sorry. You just move on, and I think it's a very unique summer, and I'm just glad that this summer is coinciding with the fact that we need these midfielders. So, so some little bit of lady luck there for us, I think.
Yeah, and it's a summer of many moving parts as well. So even these guys who we wouldn't traditionally think of as available, like you said, Barella, Tchouaméni, for example, they could, like you said, become available. Madrid's interest in Jude absolutely could put a guy like Tchouaméni, who hasn't really gotten as much of a sniff as he should have at Madrid. It could put him in the shop window. And Barella, there's been recent links and things like that. Italy to England for Italian players who are important to their clubs. Not a super well trodden path in the last decade or so. I just want to get your guys' thoughts on Nicolo Barella. Is he someone that you guys think A, would be a good fit, B, would be attainable for a good price this summer, a price that wouldn't hurt the rest of the rebuild? Because obviously, as we've seen with Jude, there's a limit to how much Liverpool are willing to spend on one player this summer. Is he someone who's attainable for a good price and that you think would fit in like a glove, like so many seem to think he would?
I'll just go on this. Nicola Barella has one job before any links and stuff come about, Evan. He has one job to do, and that's to save football. He needs to make sure that he's part of that Inter Milan team that beats Manchester City in the Champions League. And if they win it, his stock price, I'm sure, will rocket. through the roof. I think even now, I think if they were thinking of selling him, I think 70 plus, 70, 75 million. I think he's not your typical Italian midfielder. He's very cultured. You were accustomed to a more of a Spanish type midfielder. The amount of flair and creativity that he has, such a tenacious midfielder. He can do everything. And sometimes he does have patches of, during a season where he does, like, his form does drop, but he's a quality midfielder, a complete midfielder. And yes, there's always that sort of, nervousness about Italians transitioning to England. We've had issues, before with Aquilani, most recent Italian midfielder that we had, but we had a few Italians that come and haven't sort of suited the game, and they usually go back to Italy and they find their feet again. But Nicola Barella, I think Stefan Farland has just said it as well. There is no more of a perfect player than Barella. I think he has got everything about him, and if his stock will only go up, Evan, you feel whether we want to part with 70, 80 million on him, that's a question for the board and for Pep Linders and Klopp and the the FSG to decide. But he's a quality player. I mean, if we could get him in, wow, he's on par with Jude, I would say, as the statement signing.
Wow. I mean, coming from you, Avi, on par with Jude. Wow, that's a crazy thing to say. But Barella, yeah, if the price is right, then I could see it being a statement signing. It's been mentioned by some of the upper tier sources that Klopp's always been a fan. I think it will come down to price, but like Moby said, maybe a bit more available this summer. It's been well publicized. Inter have some financial issues, and obviously a statement sale would help with that. But whether that's the hometown kid, probably occasionally current and then future captain, I'm not quite sure. The likelihood of a Nicola Barella, Moby, do you see that as being something we would pivot to in a heartbeat? Like, is he to Liverpool? Is he in that tier of he becomes available, we spring for him? Is he sort of in that tier on our short list, do you think?
I'll be completely honest. There's one league that I find really boring and I don't watch it, Serie A. I don't watch it at all. So I probably will not be the right person to give it in depth into Barella, because I really don't watch a lot of Serie A for many reasons. But I think the price range has now gone beyond what we'd spend on a player, just because now he's a Champions League finalist, and let's see what kind of heroics he can do in the next little while. But I think these are pushing his price up, and I think that train is slowly starting to sail away. So I think it's a long shot, but I think other midfielders are definitely more of a priority, I think. But yeah, I mean, listen, even if we were to be available, the Italians leave Italy very rarely. So I can see him stay at Inter. He might not even leave, right?
It would surprise me if that's sort of a move we did, given our hesitancy to spend so much money on one given player. Super chat to get through. Ash says, what are your thoughts on adding to the attack? Any chance of a young signing, someone like Barcola, or does Moby have another name we are watching? I think attacking signings a bit of an afterthought for most fans, wouldn't you say, Moby? Because we've added to the attack big, blockbuster names, Nunez and Gakpo. We spent a lot of money on attack recently. I think everyone's thoughts are elsewhere. How would you address this question?
Yeah, I think. Look, I think Barcola is a really good shout. We've been watching him quite closely this window. One of the main reasons is because Textor has to sell players to raise a lot of money this summer. It was part of the clause that when he bought the club, or when he bought the main shares, he had to generate a specific amount of income to invest and all that stuff. So he has to raise these, and most of the time Leon does that by selling players. So Cherki will probably be for sale, and Barcola will definitely be for sale. And as a right winger, it's somebody that we need a profile to play behind Mo Salah. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're looking at him. And he's definitely a pass first sort of like right winger, which would go really well because we have some really good attackers. So yeah, I think watch that space.
Hmm.
I think if there's a deal to be had there for little money or not a big outlay, I think we'll move. I think
Hmm.
that's definitely an option.
Interesting to hear. I would definitely any sort of attacking signing really this summer would raise my eyebrows a bit because I like everybody else. My eyes are being distracted by this midfielder or this midfielder or this defender, for example. And then we have another message here from Ariel. Greetings from Argentina. I hope Alexis signs for Liverpool. I enjoyed when he played for Boca Juniors. Yeah, he had a loan there. Interesting. Yeah, good memory. I'd completely forgotten about that. Your comment confused me initially,
Saludos,
I will
saludos.
admit. Yeah, yeah. Good ball knowledge there. Mo wants us to ask you, Moby, about Vitor Roque, who I know, I've seen you tweet
Yeah.
about him as
Oh
well.
man.
Just yet another just a guy who looks destined for the top.
Yeah. Vitor Roque is, for a country like Brazil where you have incredible amount of talents that come out and you get really excited about. For me, in the last 8 9 months, without without any hesitancy, I can say Vitor Roque is that player. I loved
Mm,
watching him. I thought he was going to move on to Europe, but I was surprised to see he signed for a different club in Brazil, which is a really good idea for him, a mature decision. But absolutely, he's Brazil's number 9 coming through. Fantastic finisher, flair, everything. He just has that happiness to his game. You give the ball to
mhm,
him, he'll make something out of it. Absolutely incredible. I think we know him very well, but unfortunately, our ownership needs to change our strategy to sign these players from South America direct because we could have
mhm.
had many, many different players, like I said, before Brighton even, and we just didn't move on those things. So, my opinion, Vitor Roque, superstar in the making, 100%. There's just no questions about that. I'm very confident on that.
And that's a big endorsement, people. Moby has such a great eye for talent, and not just a great eye for talent, but a great work ethic to go out and identify the talent. It's not easy to have the encyclopedic knowledge. So we salute Moby for that, for providing us with all the information. As my dad said a few weeks ago, Moby, I never knew there was so many 17-year-old players in the world before I started following Moby. And I think I love that comment because I think he
I
speaks
know,
for
I
all
know.
of us when he says that. But that about
Thank you.
concludes what we have lined up for today. I would like to thank my co-host, of course, Avi. He got so upset when I didn't immediately acknowledge him at the start of the show. Avi, thank you
You're
so
forgiven.
much.
You're forgiven.
Oh, thank you so much. I was really worried. I was really worried this entire time. And of course, thank you to Moby for coming on and showing all that great insight and letting us know about players like Kokchu and Barcola and Roque, who guys like me and Abby, we just don't have the research on. So Moby, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you so much for having me, guys. Always a pleasure, always fun. And let's do another one once we get Alexis it or something like that, so we can celebrate
Moby confirming
celebrate
it
that a
there.
little bit.
Moby slip of the
No, no,
tongue. They're
no,
confirming it basically there, Moby.
no, no. Let's hope so. I mean, I feel really confident that we'll get this through, but obviously, I think out of respect, he's also not making too many agreements just yet out of respect to Brighton. So I think past the next game they have, Southampton is it? I think we'll get it. I think it's good odds. So cross your fingers.
Absolutely. My fingers are crossed. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been Across the Pond. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.